The studio lights blazed down as the familiar opening. Jingle of Today with Jenna and Friends filled the air. The audience clapped with energy, eager to see Blake Shelton take his spot on the cozy couch beside Jenna and her co-hosts. At first, everything seemed typical. Jenna beamed with her trademark smile and welcomed the country superstar warmly. "Blake Shelton is here with us today," she announced, her voice bubbling with excitement. The crowd erupted into cheers. Blake waved, grinning, but his usual easy charm seemed slightly strained. Jenna launched into light questions about his music and life on his ranch with Gwen Stefani, but the tension in Blake's shoulders was hard to miss. He shifted often, drumming his fingers on his knee, as though waiting for something. When one co-host tried to bring up a playful jab about his marriage, Blake's smile tightened and he answered flatly. The crowd chuckled nervously, but the studio energy had already shifted. As the interview continued, Jenna leaned forward, her tone a mix of curiosity and persistence. The camera zoomed in slightly, catching the subtle glint in her eyes as she prepared the next question. "Blake, there's been a lot of buzz about your decision to step away from The Voice. Some people think you just couldn't keep up with the younger talent." Before she could finish, Blake's expression hardened instantly. His easygoing smile dropped and his jaw clenched. He cut her off sharply, his deep voice carrying an edge that hadn't been there earlier. "That's a load of nonsense. Jenna, I've been in this business longer than most of those so-called younger talents. I stepped away because I wanted to, not because I couldn't handle it." The audience reacted immediately, a soft ripple of gasps and murmurs moving through the studio. The playful, upbeat energy that usually filled the show was gone in a flash, replaced with tension so thick the room seemed to shrink. Jenna, still holding her professional poise, tried to laugh lightly, her hand brushing at her cue cards as though the awkwardness could be swept away. "Oh, Blake, I didn't mean it like that," she said, her voice pitched a little higher than usual, an unmistakable sign she was trying to control the situation. But Blake wasn't letting it slide. He leaned back slightly in his chair, crossing his arms, his eyes fixed firmly on Jenna. "You think it's funny to throw that out here in front of everybody?" he said, his voice booming louder than before. The crowd grew uneasy, shifting in their seats. Some audience members gave nervous laughs. Others whispered to the people beside them, unsure of how to react. The cameramen exchanged quick glances, and the producers in the control booth gestured frantically at each other, deciding whether to cut to commercial. Jenna's trademark smile faltered, a flicker of tension passing across her face before she forced it back into place. She tried to steer the interview back to safer ground, but Blake's irritation lingered like a storm cloud above the set. "We love you, Blake, and people just want to understand your choices," she said gently, her voice a little steadier now, though her posture betrayed her discomfort. The damage, however, was already done. Blake's sharp response had shifted the mood entirely, and the studio audience sat frozen, waiting to see what would come next. The producers in the control room grew restless as the situation on stage became more volatile. Through the glass, red lights blinked as directors barked instructions, their voices overlapping in tense urgency. On the set, Blake leaned forward in his chair, his large hands gripping the armrests as if holding himself back. His voice carried sharpness now, stripped of the casual humor he was known for. "I came here to talk about my music, not to get dragged about things that don't matter." The weight of his words settled heavily over the audience. Jenna raised her hand slightly, the gesture small and careful, like someone trying to calm a spooked animal. She wore her professional smile, but the strain around her eyes was undeniable. "Blake," she began softly, "we just want to give people a glimpse into what's going on in your life." But before she could ease the tension, her co-host interjected with forced brightness. "But don't you think fans deserve to know?" That was the spark. Blake's chair screeched loudly against the studio floor as he shifted abruptly, the sound startling in the hushed room. "Fans deserve honesty, not gossip," he snapped, his voice rising with unmistakable anger. The audience responded with an awkward clap, some attempting to support him, others unsure if applauding was the right choice. The tension was too strong to dissolve. Jenna inhaled deeply, steadying herself, and sat taller, projecting calm authority. "Blake, we just ask what people are curious about. That's our job." Blake turned his head sharply, his eyes narrowing. "Well, your job is turning into a circus act." he retorted, each word clipped and deliberate. Gasps rippled through the audience like a wave. A few people covered their mouths in shock. Others looked around, as if seeking reassurance that they weren't imagining the hostility. In the control booth, someone shouted, "Cut to B-roll," but the cameras stayed live, capturing every moment of the unraveling exchange. On stage, the air felt electric. Jenna's smile froze into place, but her cheeks had lost some color. She tightened her grip on her cue cards, visibly rattled yet refusing to back down. Blake leaned back again, shaking his head, clearly unwilling to soften his stance. The exchange had gone from awkward to explosive, and everyone in the room knew there was no easy path back to normal. The breaking point came quickly, almost faster than the producers or hosts could react. In the control booth, hands waved frantically, voices collided through headsets, and the countdown clock for commercial loomed, but none of it slowed what was happening live on stage. A producer rushed discreetly to the corner of the set, speaking urgently into Jenna's earpiece. Her instructions clipped and urgent. On stage, Blake pushed back his chair with deliberate force, the legs scraping across the floor with a jarring screech that cut through the silence. He rose to his full height, his broad frame dominating the space. His voice boomed deep and resonant, carrying across the studio with the weight of finality. "If you don't want me to be real, then maybe I shouldn't be here at all." The audience erupted with a mix of emotions. Some clapped instinctively, their applause ringing awkwardly in the tense room. Others booed softly, while many simply sat frozen, eyes wide, realizing they were witnessing a moment that would make headlines. The ripple of reactions only amplified the surreal atmosphere. Jenna leaned forward slightly, her hand half raised in a futile gesture to hold him back. Her voice cracked with urgency, but she kept the tone polite, almost pleading. "Blake, we'd love for you to stay." Before she could finish her sentence, the producer standing off to the side gave a sharp gesture. Two members of security, dressed discreetly in black, began to move toward the stage. Their approach wasn't aggressive, but it was firm, a silent signal that the decision had been made. Blake's face flushed red with visible anger. He glanced at them, then back at Jenna, his jaw tight, his chest rising and falling heavily. "Good luck with your little show," he muttered, his words sharp enough to slice through the uneasy quiet. With that, he turned and strode off stage, his boots echoing across the polished floor, each step a declaration of finality. The audience buzzed loudly now, voices overlapping in whispers and gasps, the tension finally breaking into chaos. Jenna sat frozen for a brief second, her cue cards trembling slightly in her hands. Then, with the poise of a seasoned host, she forced a strained smile and turned back to the camera. "Well, folks, Live TV is always unpredictable," she said, though her steady tone was betrayed by the tightness around her mouth. The set, once lively and bright, now felt shaken, carrying the weight of a moment no one present would soon forget.